So this is, you'll recognize at least one of the faces in this slide. I'm sure this picture was taken at the Western European Young Leaders Training last year. And it's also on the website, as you know, on the front page. So there's always a competition for good pictures that can take this pride of place. Now, we've been doing a lot on COVID in the last few months, and I'll come back. There's just some of the things are listed there, but I will come back to that when we do the second half. I was due to do about 8 trips abroad between the end or the middle of March and the middle of June. And of course, all of them have been cancelled. And so I thought that this would be a great opportunity to take 3 months off, but actually we found lots of things to do in the meantime, and both Josh and I have been fairly busy filling our time with other things much more related to the crisis, and we'll come back to that. But just some general news on ICMDA first of all. The ICMDA is overseen by the ICMDA Board, and that's chaired by Elmer Thiessen, who's a Canadian dentist, who you can see on your screen here. And a subset of the board meets every 2 months to maintain oversight and to support us, because the board itself only meets once a year. And then there's a third organisation called the ICMDA UK Trust, which is the umbrella under which we run ICMDA out of the UK. And they met along with the executive and approved the business plan and budget for this year on the 23rd of March. Now, that was the same day that we went into lockdown in the UK. And so you can imagine all of those plans are now pretty much up in the air at the moment because of lockdown happening everywhere. The ICMDA board was going to meet in Tanzania on the 30th of June to the 3rd of July this year, but now that is not now happening because the COVID epidemic is rising in East Africa now, and we suspect at that time it'll probably be at or near its peak. So the meeting's been cancelled, but instead we're going to hold a virtual meeting of the board, so all the business will be done, and that will be 3 3-hour meetings on the 30th of June to the 2nd of July. We'll meet in the afternoon here, but for people on the west coast of Canada, it will be 5 o'clock in the morning, and for those in Australia, it will be 10 o'clock at night, finishing at 1 a.m. And that's the challenge with a board that's so international. The prayer diary, you all know, we launched it last year in April, May. Every 2 months it comes out now in its 7th edition, and it's on the website in PDF format where you can download it. We sent it to 800 people and in hard copy, so they get real copies of it to read. And we know a lot go through this and pray. Most of those people are in the UK for postal access. And then it's translated, or it goes by email in PDF format to 1,600 others, including all of you and the national leaders. And it's translated daily into 5 different languages by people on WhatsApp groups. And we send it out on Twitter and Facebook as well. Now, after a year, we're going to have it redesigned. We did the first one in-house with Josh doing it, and it's going to be redesigned. That's what the new cover is going to look like, and the inside will look quite different as well. So watch out for that. We've just started working on that for the near future, for June, July of this year. We also put out this year a 2019 impact report, which is a glossy booklet. And this happened again just as Britain went into lockdown. We managed to post some out, but all of the rest are still sitting in the office. But we hope that you'll all be able to make use of these once we get over the problem with COVID. It's got lots of information, great stories, and tells about the work of ICMDA. I send out a monthly newsletter, started it just over a year ago, so it's 15th edition now, with news of conferences, events, and developments. We try to keep it very brief, so it's in bite-sized portions of 150 words each, everything with a picture, and that goes out to 2,400 people on the mailing list. We've had a lot of new people join because of the ICMDA webinars recently. All the back issues are there on the website if you want to look back. We've been working on translation work quite a lot in the last year or so, and this is happening faster and faster now because we've now got volunteer translation teams operating in 5 different languages: French, Russian, Spanish, Korean, and Portuguese. And so we have versions of the Doctor's Life Support in 4 of those languages. We've just translated Doctor's Life of Faith into French, and several other the booklets that I brought over from CMF are now available in English and French as well. But on our training website, almost all the videos there, quite a lot, over 30 videos, are now subtitled in 7 languages, so that you could look at those and use them in your groups. And even though the language spoken is English, they'll have translation into the 7 main languages that people think. And blog posts are now available in 5 different languages. Some changes coming up. When the board meets at the end of June and the beginning of July, they'll be looking at the issue of regions within ICMDA, and we think we need to make some changes here. They haven't been made yet, but they've been discussed with those in the various regions, and everyone seems to be in favor of them. And this is briefly what is being proposed, that the Eurasia region, which is huge with 51 countries, is going to split into 2 halves, East and West. So there'll be the 3 sub-regions in the West and in the East and the 4 in the West. And that will mean that we'll need a new regional secretary for the eastern half, the new Eurasia region. Also within Eurasia and between Eurasia and METNA, we're going to move 3 countries from METNA into the Caucasus sub-region and of the Eurasia region. And the reason for that is that these countries are not Arabic speaking, and there's already much better communications with the Caucasus region with them and with Central Asia. We're thinking also that Francophone Africa will become a separate region in sub-Saharan Africa. And so all of these changes which won't be discussed or agreed until the beginning of July, will mean that we will need to appoint 2 new regional secretaries, one for Eurasia and one for Francophone Africa. There are some new Bible studies available now. We're really thankful to the Indonesian CMDF, who with Percantis, their local IFES organization, have granted us completely free of charge the use of Doctors After God's Own Heart, which is a series of Bible studies. And there's now a group that are going to translate these into Portuguese. So that it's available on the ICMDA website as a free download. The other book, The Doctor's Life of Faith, written by Janet Goodall, which has 32 chapters altogether. It goes through the whole Bible and relates it all to the medical and dental life. And at the end of each of the chapters, each one's only 5 or 6 pages in length, there is a list of scriptures and also discussion questions. And so these are very good to use as Bible studies too. The whole book's available as a free PDF download from the website, and then you can click through onto the individual chapters on the page on the right there. And that means that you can print out just 4 or 5 pages as a PDF, give them around your group, or make them available to people on email. And then you can have a meeting either virtually or together once COVID ends, and use those as Bible studies. So do make use of those 2 new resources. Doctor's Life and Faith is now available in both English and in French. We set up a group we call the Senior Team. It was really to provide fellowship, prayer and support, and a source of ideas for Josh and me in the office. And Jorge, Santosh, Augustine and Alex have been meeting with us every Thursday for discussion, prayer and share. We just meet for an hour. We talk about what's happening in our regions, in our families. We pray for one another, and we talk about upcoming events and share news. So this group gave some input into the plans for how we were going to structure the summit, for example. But just let me encourage you to get together in small groups around the world, between regions as well, to share news like we have today. The Saline process, which most of you will be familiar with, so it's a very good training tool for evangelism for doctors and dentists to use. in the consulting room. And the ICMDA is one of 10 movements that's involved in the ISP, including 3 international movements. The other 2 are HCFI and NCFI. And we have not been that active in ICMDA with saline, except in some countries like India, the UK and Australia. But in many other countries, there hasn't been much happening. And so we've set up a global ICMDA coordinating team, which has got 9 people in it. And most of them, almost all of them, have been saline trainers. And we meet once a month. And what we've done is agreed a policy for the way saline is going to be rolled out within ICMDA. And also, there's a trial going on at the moment, teaching saline in an online context in which we're participating as well. We're also putting together a new saline global map as to how that's going to work. And we think that this can really help us in terms of developing training for other things as well as saline. The Sydenham Conferences, some of you will have been to these. They're run by CMF UK. They've been going for about, well, over 20 years now, to train student and junior graduate leaders from all over the world. And there've been over 300 leaders trained in them. Many of them are now leaders of their national movements. And we ran 4 international residential Sydenhams last year in places like Bali and in East Africa and in Southern Africa. And so this year we were going to run another 6 of these, but of course COVID came and so we couldn't. So what we're planning now is to run, to pilot Sydenham online. And so it'll be 10 90-minute sessions, which we're going to do in the Eurasia region initially. And then that will help us get the material, we'll record it all, and then we'll make it available much more widely. So a lot of thanks to Esther, whose idea this was and who was coordinating the project. More on that coming up. Just a word about WhatsApp groups. We've got over 30 WhatsApp groups that we know of, both regional and national, and also some language groups as well. But they vary in size and number. Some of them have over 100 people in them. Some of them are very small. Some of them are working well, and there's quite a lot of duplication and overlap between them as well. And so this came out of a discussion with the AEOs, Hedwin and Nergal and Augustine, but we thought what we need to do is rationalize this much better so that we can more efficiently communicate across WhatsApp. And so we started a project earlier this month just to map all of the WhatsApp groups that we have to find out where the gaps are. And what we're hoping to do on the basis of that is probably create some new groups, but also maybe even put some of them on furlough, and also perhaps combine some, but identify where the problems in communication are. And our dream is this, that when we send out messages in WhatsApp on the central groups, so the groups for field workers, the Summit 2019, the ICMDA Students and Juniors list, regional secretaries, ones like that, that there'll be someone on all of those groups who will be able to cascade it, the message into the various regions and into the various countries. But in order to do that, we need to provide the link and have people taking that responsibility. So we may well come back to you and ask about the WhatsApp groups in your region and country, if you can tell us who's coordinating them. But there's an Excel spreadsheet recording that information on the server. You know, we work very closely with lots of other organizations in partnership, and we've started 2 new partnerships just in the last few months. That's with the CCIH, Christian Connections and International Health, that brings hospitals together all over the world, and also the WEA, the World Evangelical Alliance, which unites the evangelical alliances in different countries around the world. And then you'll see some of the other groups like IHS Global, who do Saline Partnership, Prime, Lausanne, the other HCFI, NCFI here, which have been mentioned already. And specifically, the 3 international healthcare, Christian healthcare professional groups, ICMDA, Nurses Christian Fellowship International, and Healthcare Christian Fellowship International are working very closely together on some issues, particularly on saline, but the leaders are all very good friends, and we have good fellowship with one another. We pray for one another, and we've just started having a meeting every month between the chairs and CEOs of these organizations. So there are just 6 of us, the chair and CEO from each of the 3, and we share ideas, we think about strategic working, and we enter into partnership where that seems a good idea. Now, there's no idea about uniting these groups into one organization. Nobody's thinking of that, but we do think that we can work closely together, and if we know what's happening between each other, we can synergize for the gospel. And so you'll see on this slide, there's a list. This is an Excel spreadsheet. It only goes from Afghanistan to Ecuador, but there are 195 countries, plus Hong Kong and Taiwan and a few other territories. And all of them are listed by country and by region and by population, so we can sort them in these ways. And then these 3 columns you can see at the right are color-coded, and it's the same color coding we use. So green is a fully affiliated group, national group. Orange is a group that's not yet fully affiliated, but we're in touch with them. Blue is individual contacts and grey is nothing. And you can see that both HCFI and ICMDA have a lot of green overlaps. And in some of these places, we're working with exactly the same group in the country. So it makes sense to be communicating well with each other and keeping good relationships. Just a few other things briefly that are coming up or happening already. Santosh, as our head of training, is going to be working on putting a set of bioethics webinars together. We've already filmed these with Professor John Wyatt. There are 14 of them. And we're going to set up a program whereby we train small groups who will then be able to use them to train others. And so we'll be coming back to you on how that works out. But we're thinking of just meeting with 4 or 5 people at a time who would go through the material, be trained in how to use it, and then each of them will go away and set up their own small group. And this is very much the same kind of pattern that we've used with DMM, the disciple making groups that we have within ICMDA. Now, these were started up by Nurgle and by Esther particularly, and they've really taken off in the Eurasia region. But now I know a lot of you all around the world are involved in these DMM groups where you meet together to talk, to pray with one another and to support one another in witness. And so we hope that the DMM will be a model for the way we do other things like the bioethics webinars as well. Regional budgets. Now, I said that in March, the trust and executive met and they've approved the budget for the year. Now that means money has been allocated, as it always is, to all of the regions through the regional secretaries. Now we haven't sent, we've sent some of that money out, but most of it we haven't, just for the reason of COVID, that people are not, conferences are not happening, so travel is not happening, so airfares are not being paid for, and in addition, people don't need scholarships to go to conferences, but the money is still available. And so we'll be in touch with each one of you as regional secretaries as to how much of that you would like and when. Now, all of us, of course, are thinking, well, if we've got money to spend, but we're not running conferences or doing events, what can we spend it on? And it may well be that we decide to spend less this year and hold it over for next year or for future conferences. But one thing I'd really like you to think about is the whole issue of IT, because if we're going to be doing a lot more meetings like this in future, then some of us are well equipped to do that, but others are not. And so if you could think about in your region, what would help you from an IT point of view, whether it's internet connections, a subscription to Zoom, or even computer equipment and whatever. Think about that and let us know, because it may well be that we can use some of those regional budgets to improve IT. So money that you would normally spend on scholarships and travel could be available this year for IT development. And then just finally, I think most of you will be being contacted about the European Leadership Forum. This is a big conference, normally with about 800 people, that meets at the end of May in Poland. Of course, it's not happening this year in Poland, but they've opened it up so that all of the sessions with some really great speakers are available to anyone who is invited, and all field workers have been invited of ICMDA. You have to book for it. And I've just been in touch with a leader yesterday. I'm doing a few seminars at the conference, but he told me that there are over 3,000 Christian leaders booked. Most of them will come from the Eurasia region, but if you've had an invite anywhere in the world, you can join them. So if you're looking for some good training and talks and input, and also working with other like-minded people, there's a whole series of plenary talks, of networks, of seminars that you can book for and attend online. So we'll come back later to the question of COVID, but that's just an update of some of the things that are happening in ICMDA.